welcome everyone to the Cloud English Podcast. Today is November 11th, 2026, and we are going to be talking today about, we'll be talking about a few things, but we're going to be talking about geography. Actually, I just realized 5 minutes ago that it's Veterans Day, so I might talk a little bit about what that is for those who don't know, or just share some thoughts on Veterans Day in general. I can believe I didn't realize it was, but then Kathy told me, hey, don't forget it's Veterans Day, and I said to myself, yes, it's Veterans Day. I should talk about that too. So Veterans Day, geography, and I'll be answering questions today. So if you have questions around learning English, culture, Veterans Day, geography, pronunciation, how to put sentences together, writing, whatever it may be, ask away. I will be answering questions throughout the podcast today. At the top of the show, just a couple things. So my writing course, which I launched this week, still is doing, it still isn't doing, I'm still doing the special launch sale on the writing course. That expires on Saturday evening, if I remember correctly, so in a couple of days. And so if you haven't grabbed that already, make sure you do. That course covers everything you need to write clearly and effectively. It's over 9 hours, about 9.5 hours of content. It includes a bunch of examples and download PDFs, practice exercises, tons of stuff to teach you how to write clearly and effectively. Again, you can get that for the lowest possible price that I'm able to offer it at. That means that it will never, ever be lower. It might be the same price in the future again, but it will never be lower than the current price. So check it out in the link at the top in the description. The writing course on Udemy, I strongly recommend it. This may be the course I'm most proud of, or at least I feel most confident about. I feel really good about this course. I think it's going to help a lot of people improve their English writing skills, which is essential. Because think about it. Maybe you speak pretty well, but the standard is not as high when you're speaking. We can say, hey, I don't know, we can say these little things. So there's a lot more wiggle room in terms of fluency and clarity when it comes to spoken English. There's a lot more room for not being perfect or not making complete sentences. When it comes to writing, if your writing is not clear, you are being judged on that. Let's say the person who sees the email you sent, the person who's looking at whatever it is that you wrote, a description of a product, or whatever it is that you wrote, if they've never met you, if they've never spoken to you, they are judging you completely based on that. Okay, so how are they going to judge you? Are they going to say, okay, this person is a goofball who doesn't know how to express themselves? Ignore. Well, they might do that, even though they would do that unfairly, because you're actually smart. You're actually a big brain genius, right? But if your writing isn't representing you, your intelligence, your ideas, your clarity of thought, because you don't know how to write well and clearly and structure things, organize things, have good syntax, be able to use phrases effectively, be able to click different pieces of sentences together, the grammar that you need to do that. If you don't know this stuff, then unfortunately you may be judged negatively. So that is my case for signing up for the course. I highly recommend it. If it weren't my course, I would still recommend it. It's, I think, that good. What else do we have? Yeah, if you haven't already done so, please do show your support by hitting the like button, subscribing, or if you don't see a like button, if maybe there's a thumbs up or a heart somewhere, click on that. That really helps the channel. It's a small action that you can take, which helps recommend these podcasts to others. So please do that. Please do that. Yes, please do it. And also, If you are interested in joining an English learning community, we have started building one. We have started a small group on Discord. If you're not familiar with Discord, don't be scared. It's fine. It's not a big deal. It's just a chat. Essentially, it's a chat group, and it has a few more features. So you can join the Discord for free for now, and I can't promise it's always going to be free. So that should be in the links in the description as well. If you want to listen to the podcast instead of watch, also in the links in the description, audio version, whether you want to listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, unless you're already doing that, in which case, if you want, you can watch this on YouTube and Facebook and even Twitch, believe it or not. Okay, so that's the stuff at the top of the show. Today, we're going to be talking about geography a little bit. We're going to be actually looking at Google Earth and finding some interesting geological formations and structures. And, a lot of people don't know the names for those things. So we'll go through basically a vocab list of names and then find them. I think it should be pretty fun, pretty kind of a fun activity on Google Earth. And we'll see how that goes. And I also want to talk a little bit about Veterans Day and a little bit about a theory that I've been listening to. I've been listening to a podcast, which is really interesting. So I want to share a bit about that theory. It's called the theory of the comet impact. The comet impact theory, which is really interesting, which will kind of tie into our geography discussion, geology, perhaps. So that's it. Well, I see we have some people joining already. That's fantastic. Hello and welcome. Good to have you here on this Friday. It is Friday. Yeah, it's Friday. And just pop your questions in. As I said, I will be getting to those. I will be getting to those today. All right. I'm going to be watching the comments a little more carefully today, unlike what I was doing on Wednesday, which was I didn't even have them up until later. I realized I missed a lot. Okay. So today is Memorial Day. What the heck is Memorial Day? Well, it's an American holiday. It's an American holiday that actually is a day that people get off. A bank holiday, sometimes they're called. There are different types of holidays. There are holidays that people just celebrate, but then there are bank holidays that people get off often for work. They'll actually get off. Some companies don't give certain days off. They have different rules. But for example, if you try to go to the bank or something like that, or maybe a national park, it might be closed on a bank holiday day. So for example, Halloween, is that a bank holiday? No. So people celebrate that day, but you can go to the bank, everything's still open, and no company is going to be giving people a day off because it's Halloween. That idea just seems crazy to me, right? But Memorial Day, sorry, did I say Memorial Day? I meant Veterans Day. What am I saying? Veterans Day is one of those days, and it's kind of a hit and miss because some companies will give them days off and some will not. So let's just sort of understand a little bit about how Veterans Day work. By the way, Memorial Day, which my brain got mixed up. I'm a little slow today. Memorial Day is kind of the same thing. Memorial Day and Veterans Day are both kind of recognizing the contributions of soldiers to fight for America. So I think those got switched around in my brain. And I apologize for causing any confusion there. So let's hop over here and just read a little bit about it. Let's learn about it. Because I'm really bad at holidays when it comes to knowing when they are in the year. People ask me, which day is Labor Day? Which day is Memorial Day? Which day is Veterans Day? Which day is President's Day? I have no idea. I don't know when they are in the year. I couldn't tell you if they're at the end of the year, the beginning, in the middle. I don't know. I know that Halloween is on the 31st of October, probably because that happens to be my birthday. I know that Thanksgiving is on the 4th Thursday of November, because I don't know why I know that. Maybe I like Thanksgiving. I don't know. And I know when Christmas is, and New Year's. I know when that is, but that's about it. I know that Valentine's Day is kind of early February, right? Sometime in February, but I couldn't tell you when it is. I have no idea. Sometime, I think it's in February. I could be wrong. Okay, so Veterans Day. And actually, since I got Veterans Day and Memorial Day mixed up, we can look at both and sort of see the differences between them. And yeah, keep the questions coming. As I said, I will get to those if you have questions about grammar, culture, holidays, anything like that. Okay. So Veterans Day in the United States, national holiday honoring veterans of the armed forces, that means the military, and those killed in the country's wars. The observance originated in 1919 on the first anniversary of the 1918 armistice that ended World War I, also known as Armistice Day. So you had World War I, got the Germans involved, World War I, Germans involved against the French and the British, and then the United States got involved, but it's obviously a world war, so a lot of countries involved there. Blah, blah, blah. World War I at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. So if you search Arlington Cemetery, it's this giant military cemetery where a lot of soldiers are buried, and all of the stones look exactly the same. And I'm looking at a picture right now. If you're listening, you won't be able to see it, but there are a bunch of white stones. And if you watch the movie Saving Private Ryan, which is a great war film by Steven Spielberg, that's about World War II. But at the beginning of the movie, you have Private Ryan going to Arlington, and he's reflecting on his war experience that was very traumatic for him, and the people who saved his life. So anyway, back to this. Okay. And then I'm actually curious about the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day, because I actually couldn't tell you the difference between them. Maybe I'm not patriotic enough. I do appreciate that I live in a relatively free country with there's a lot of great things, or good things and bad things, about living in America. And I think overall a lot of freedoms compared to a lot of other places in the world. And so I do appreciate the sacrifice and service of the military. I think I'm not particularly patriotic, maybe because I don't think about it a lot. I'm not really oriented to have a lot of pride in my nation for some reason. I'm just not programmed that way. Maybe also because whenever I see something good, I also see the bad. You could say, well, the United States military is really good at protecting the United States, but what about what happens in those other countries? What about that stuff? So it tempers my enthusiasm. So I'm not super patriotic, but at the same time, I appreciate the sacrifice of soldiers, and that someone would go and fight and want to protect their families and have to die to sacrifice for them. The previous year, unknown soldiers had been interred at Westminster Abbey in London, England, and the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, France. Veterans Day is celebrated on Friday, November 11th. It is a bank holiday, though, right? It's a bank holiday, right? So let's see. Poppies have long been associated with World War I memorials. Arbor Day. Who cares about Arbor Day? What I want to know is it a bank holiday? Why is Veterans Day on November 11th? Why the 11th? This particular day recognizes the armistice of November 11th, 1918, the formal agreement that marked the end of World War I. For years, Americans called November 11th Armistice Day, Armistice Day, until it was renamed Veterans Day in 1954. Ah, that's interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. Veterans Day is one of 10 of the United States federal holidays, meaning non-essential government offices like the post office are closed. Yes, okay, I thought so. Good, at least I was right about that. Okay, gives the country the opportunity to thank those who have previously served the U.S. military, and Memorial Day honors military members who died in service. Okay, that makes sense. Now I understand the difference. I think in my mind I had conflated the two, actually. Veterans Day gives the country an opportunity to thank those who have previously served in the U.S. military. So anybody, even if they didn't fight, they served. And Memorial Day honors those who died in service. Okay, very clear now. Thank you. Armed Forces Day, celebrated in May, recognizes those currently serving. Do we really need 3 days in the year to remember and appreciate the military? I feel like 2 is enough. 2's enough, but whatever. Okay, great. Let's see what the actual Marines have to say. The actual military. So the Marines, they're always trying to recruit people to join. You get pretty good benefits if you join the military, honestly. I think you get free university later after you're done and a pretty good retirement plan. I think the pay is okay. But if you stay with it, I think it can be a really good career path. So this is from the Marines, and they have 383,000 subscribers. Well, hey. And they made a Veterans Day
It is with honor, courage, and commitment that we stand in the face of adversity with unwavering resilience, poised to overcome the most formidable of foes. You see, this mentality is a part of our culture, a warrior's ethos. And just as iron sharpens iron, we too are refined to our interaction. In times of chaos or peace, we willingly pay its price because this freedom is not free. The upholding of a sacred trust, an inheritance from generations that have preceded us, whose actions speak testament to the character of our core. So with knowledge of this legacy and faith in something greater than ourselves, we stand bold, determined to make a difference, to make our presence felt. And to this cause, we dedicate our very lives. This title, etched on our hearts until the day we die. We are once and forever United States Marines.
Famous image from Iwo Jima, that last one. There's a statue dedicated to this. You've probably seen it before, but the guy's raising the flag on Iwo Jima during World War II, after they, I think, took the island, something like that. Anyway, so that's Veterans Day, and now I finally know the difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. So good for me. Good for all of us. Pretty good. The video is well done. Okay. Let me get to a question here, and then I want to talk about geography a little bit. Welcome, everybody. I see Luba's here, and Esme is here. Hello, good to have you. Tsering Sherpa, hello, hey, good. Again, welcome. Awesome. Emin, great. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask away. This is a pretty big question, but I'll see what I can do with it. Esme says, my level in English is B1, but you told me a plan. Wait, let me start this over, okay? My level in English is B1. Could you tell me a plan how to improve my English and prepare for an IELTS exam? It's a good question. If you have an IELTS coming up very soon, let's say you have the IELTS exam coming up in 3 months, okay? Let me be totally honest with you. Your English skill is not going to make a huge improvement in a matter of 3 months, but you can make a lot of progress in specific areas. You can improve pronunciation in 3 months if you really work on it. You can learn a lot of words and phrases in 3 months. Again, I'm just assuming this. You can learn a lot of words and phrases in 3 months. A lot. You can figure out a lot of grammatical stuff in 3 months. You can improve your writing in 3 months. Now, are you going to be able to really overall improve your spoken fluency a lot in 3 months? That's a harder project because that comes down to building habits. It's a slightly longer term thing, right? So I would say a good strategy would be to identify the things that you can improve more quickly that will improve your possible score. And if I were you, this is what I would focus on, okay? So say put aside the sort of big thing of, I'm going to make my English better, that broad statement, and choose isolated skills. Okay, number 1, my writing. What is it about your writing? Well, number 1, I don't know how to structure an essay. Number 2, I don't know how to structure a single paragraph well. Number 3, I don't know about perfect punctuation, right? Number 4, my syntax is awful. Okay, those 4 things you can improve in a matter of weeks, right? I just launched a course on this topic. It's not that hard to improve a lot of things about your writing. So you can improve that for sure. Okay, so that's writing. What about pronunciation? Okay, my pronunciation I know is not clear. So I'm going to spend the next month every single day doing a shadowing exercise with different types of speech, maybe some from the news, some from movies and TV shows, some from TED Talks, right? I'm going to do the shadowing exercise where I imitate the sounds, not the words. And if I do that every single day for a month, probably I'm going to have a little bit more of that natural sound, pronouncing words better, having better intonation and stress, and maybe specific word sounds I've struggled with will start to become habits, good habits, not bad habits. Okay, great. So that's pronunciation. Now, the best news for IELTS is that one of the things they look for is use of higher level vocabulary and higher level idioms. So if you are able to learn, let's say within that period of time, we're talking about 3 months, okay? Let's say in that 3-month period of time, you decide that you're going to learn 200 new relatively high-level vocabulary words. When you learn those, you're not just memorizing them, but you're making example sentences. When you look them up, you're identifying the different senses that they're used in, the different meanings that those words might have. You decide you're going to do that. You really do it, and you actually learn them. Well, those are words that you can definitely figure out how to use in your speaking tasks in the IELTS test and your composition, your essay. So 100% learning words, phrasal verbs, and idioms in that period of time is a good idea, right? So what I'm trying to do is get you to not think about my English needs to be better, and instead choose the specific things that you need to work on, right? You can also improve your writing or your listening skill if you do listening exercises. There's a really powerful one you can do. I talk about that in my course, Building Your English Brain. Check that out if you're working on your English. If you want to improve your writing and improve your sort of technique of learning English, I would go with Building Your English Brain and the new course I just launched on writing called Master English Writing. And those will take you pretty far, and then you can do a few of the other things I mentioned too. But the key is to identify the areas specifically where you can make progress and know what's possible and what's not really possible. And then you can do a lot. Just getting used to the structure of IELTS beforehand, if you're comfortable answering IELTS Part 2 questions, for example. If you're just used to that format, you're going to feel a lot more confident going in, and that's going to make a big difference too. So hopefully that helps, Esme. Good luck on the IELTS test, and let me know if there's any other suggestions that I can help with. Okay. Constantine, differentiate between following phrasal verbs, bring about and bring on. Well, let's see. Yeah. Well, it depends on the usage. So if you bring something about, you cause it to happen, right? But that would be causing events to happen. So bring about a maybe human activities have brought about an increase in the rate of global warming, something like that. You cause some event to happen. Whereas bring on is often causing something to happen to yourself, right? Maybe drinking 9 cups of coffee brought on hallucinogenic visions, right? So I'm implying that it's happening to me. When I bring something on, usually the thing that happens is not an event out there that I cause. I don't bring it about. The thing that happened or the thing that I did brought it on, right? But we use bring on in different ways too. So to bring something on yourself, maybe to take responsibilities, or to someone might say you brought this on yourself. That is when you did something and then a negative consequence happened, and then other people are saying, well, you shouldn't complain about that because the thing that happened is your fault, right? So I don't know, you're too cavalier or overconfident about something, and so you boast, and then you're put in a situation where your knowledge or your abilities are tested. You're humiliated, and so your boast compared to your humiliation shows that your boast was empty, and you're crying, I can't believe I was humiliated in public. Someone might say, well, you brought this on yourself because you were boastful. You shouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have been challenged. Because you were challenged, it turns out you don't know anything. So you brought this on yourself. We also use the phrase bring it on. To bring it on means, come on, let me have your challenges. Bring it on. You want to play basketball with me? All right, bring it on. You've got questions for me? You want me to answer? Bring it on. I'm accepting your challenge, whatever your challenge may be. I'm not rejecting your challenge. So that would be how I would explain the difference between those. Hope that helps. Ibrahim, do you think it's possible to sound like a native? And what should I do to sound authentic? I appreciate you could answer. It is possible to sound like a native, but it's not a simple answer I can give. Like, oh, here are 2 steps to becoming native. That is the whole project, right? Pronunciation is part of it. Mastering grammar is part of it. Learning the culture and idioms and phrases is part of it, right? The natural speech patterns of native speakers is part of it. So all of these things are part of it, but then going into each of those is a course by itself, or 3 courses by itself. So my advice on that one, Ibrahim, is quite honestly, you know, start with taking a couple of my courses, I think would be my advice, to be honest, because that's what my courses are all about. I'm focusing on teaching that sort of on the ground, real skills that you need to become fluent in different areas. And it's not something I can answer in a matter of minutes. Absolutely. All right. Well, keep the questions coming. I will be getting back to the questions, but I want to talk a little bit about geography. Yeah. I don't know if hallucinogenic visions would happen if you drank 9 cups of coffee, but there's only one way to find out. Only one way to find out. All right. Now, we're going to talk about geography, right? And I want to do it by looking at Google Earth. So let's hop over to Google Earth here. All right. There are a lot of features on the planet. And these features have names. I want to talk about the features. I want to explore these features, like, for example, continents and atolls. What are these things? Deltas. What's a delta? But I want to actually explore it. I want to find them on the planet. So I am here on Google Earth, which has improved a lot since I used to use it back in the day to just sort of poke around. It's much more advanced than it used to be, which is very cool. But so anyway, here we are on the planet. We're looking at Africa. What we're going to do is we're going to go through some of these terms. We'll look up definitions, but it's going to be an exploratory thing, okay? So it's not going to be like a specific lesson where I say, and here's this, and this is this. We're going to be looking for them, all right? So patience, please, because it might take me a second to find one, but I feel like making it more visual and tangible is, I think it is more interesting, but hey, that's just me. So I might be then hopping over to Google to look up specific words where I need to, or where I need a better definition. We're not going to do really obvious things. For example, an island. Okay, you know what an island is. It's a basic word, but there are a few things that are maybe less common that I would like to explore. I think we should start with the obvious, which you probably also know, but we'll start there. A continent. Okay. So a continent being actually, maybe we should start slightly bigger. So you have hemispheres on the Earth, right? A hemisphere is like your brain. You have halves. You have an eastern and a western hemisphere, and a northern and a southern hemisphere. So when we say the Americas, actually we're talking about continents in two hemispheres potentially, the northern and the southern. But the continent of North America isn't just the United States. It's also, for example, Canada. So Canada is in the northern hemisphere. And then the southern hemisphere, South America, there's Colombia. We've got Peru and Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, right? Argentina. And then this part is called Central America. So generally speaking, this middle part is called Central America. It's a way to sort of label the areas between North America and South America. Okay, so those are continents. And then, of course, we've got Asia over there, and I've always been a little unclear about where does Asia begin and where does it stop, because then Asia meets the Middle East, but the Middle East is not a continent by itself because some of the Middle East is in Asia, but then I believe some of the Middle East is also part of Africa, or is it all part of Asia? I'm not totally sure about that. Let's search that really quickly because, well, I'd like to know. My question is going to be where does Asia end and Africa begin? Exactly. The Isthmus of Suez. The Isthmus, which is another one we'll talk about. We might as well talk about that one next. And is the Isthmus of Suez unites Asia and Africa, and it is generally agreed that the Suez Canal forms the border between them. All right. So that's another one that I have here on my list, an isthmus. So it's pronounced isthmus. And people sometimes put the th there, isthmus, or they just say isthmus, and they don't really pronounce the th. So an isthmus, as I understand it before I look it up, is essentially a very thin area of land, and it's often at an isthmus where they will do a canal, because there's not much land that you have to dig through in order to make an artificial river. So, for example, the Panama Canal is in the Isthmus of Panama. It's a very narrow strip of land, and if you just blast through that, then you've got a river that connects these two bodies of water, whereas before you'd have to travel overland or you'd have to go all the way down around South America, which would take forever. So let's look up the Isthmus of Suez, or this, and I know there's also a canal at Suez too. So let's see here. I'm going to search Suez Canal, and apparently there it is. Okay, so that is the line that separates Africa and Asia right there. This is an artificial looking, apparently an artificial looking thing, right? And it allows boats to, a lot of world trade goes through here. Allows boats to pass through this. This thing is not the isthmus. The isthmus is the narrow land. So I think this is the Isthmus of Panama. This is the Isthmus of Suez, right? This narrow strip of land. And then the canal is, C-A-N-A-L, is not a natural thing, is an artificial thing, which is then dug through an isthmus in order to allow for ships to pass through, for trade to happen, essentially. Right, so if we zoom out here, yeah, so that's a narrow area of land, and there's the canal going through there. So that would allow boats to go, two bodies of water here, from the Mediterranean into is this the Black Sea? Which sea is this? Ironically, my geography is actually not that great. Which sea is this? Is this the Black Sea? Oh, the Red Sea. Okay, excuse me. The Red Sea. Okay, from the Mediterranean. This is the Mediterranean, right? Yeah, to the Red Sea. Instead of going all the way around, I guess they would have to go all the way around Africa? I think that's how that works. All right. So we've got an isthmus, and we've got a continent. And if I just look up the word isthmus here, let's get a definition. Look up isthmus, definition, isthmus, a narrow strip of land with sea on either side forming a link between two larger areas of land. There you go. There you go. The Isthmus of Suez unites Asia with Africa. Interesting. Okay, so what about the opposite of that? And I'm pretty sure the opposite of that is a strait. So let's first look up this one. So we have what's called a strait, S-T-R-A-I-T, of Gibraltar. That's the most famous one, right? Strait of Gibraltar. Strait of Gibraltar, Mediterranean Sea with the Atlantic Ocean lying between blah, blah, blah. Okay, but let's look up the word strait first. Let's just get a definition. Strait, I think it's the opposite of an isthmus. So an isthmus is a narrow strip of land, and a strait is a narrow strip of water, but it's also natural. So it's like a natural canal, I think. I could be wrong, but I think that's right. Okay, so let's do strait definition. Strait, a narrow passage of water connecting two seas or two other large areas of water. Strait of Gibraltar. And so then let's just pop that into our Google Earth here. Put in Strait of Gibraltar. There we go. Ooh, okay. So this very narrow natural passageway that connects together the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Now, what's the difference between a sea and an ocean? I think it's that a sea is more contained. For example, if you look at the Mediterranean Sea, you could argue that it's like a gigantic lake. It is bounded on pretty much all sides, whereas an ocean is so vast that you couldn't really say, oh, I see the outline of it, right? It's not super clear what the outlines are. I think that's the difference. But again, let me search this. I said this is going to be a slightly messy process here. What is the difference between a sea and an ocean? Let's get an official definition. In terms of geography, seas are smaller than oceans and are usually located where the land and ocean meet. Typically, seas are partially enclosed by land. Okay, so my intuition about that was right. Wow. Okay, so we've got a strait now. We've looked at that, an isthmus, and a continent. Let us look at one that I always mispronounce, which is an archipelago. Now, an archipelago is when you have an area that used to be all land and then the water rose, and so now you have the higher areas above the water and the lower areas below the water, like the Philippines, and so it makes a bunch of islands, essentially, where maybe it didn't used to be, because it used to be land, and then the water levels rose as the glaciers, which is the large ice caps, as the glaciers receded, the water levels around the world went up, right? So archipelago, I always pronounce it archipelago, and I'm always told, hey, don't say it like that. It's archipelago. And I know that, and I need to tell myself that constantly. So let's listen to the pronunciation.
Archipelago.
Wait, what? I was right? Archipelago? That's what I always said, and everyone said don't say archipelago, it's archipelago. But I want to say archipelago.
Archipelago.
Oh, wow. Maybe Google is learning from me. And then as I was changing to archipelago in my mind, the world was learning from me because I was saying archipelago. That would be an extremely ironic shift. Wow, amazing. Archipelago. So now I'm even more confused. Pronunciation. Okay. My flaws are on display for all to see. Archipelago. Yeah. Archipelago. Practicing here. Okay, let's try again. We got a Google pronunciation practice tool. Let's listen.
Archipelago.
Okay, yeah. Archipelago. Heyo, got it. Can we do maybe British pronunciation is Archa, or they're all Arca. Whoa, this is blowing my mind. Have I shifted into another universe? You know, there's that theory. It's called forgetting what it's called now. Maybe because I was in another universe where that theory exists, and I'm losing the memories. It's called the Mandela effect, where people thought that Nelson Mandela had died, and then they found out he hadn't. And some people believe that that's because they shifted from a parallel reality where Nelson Mandela did die, and they remember that happening, and then they shifted into a parallel universe where he hadn't, and then a bunch of people seemed to remember that he had died, but actually he never did. So I wonder if perhaps I have shifted from a universe first that had archipelago as the standard pronunciation, which is how I always used to say it, to another universe where archipelago is the correct pronunciation, and this is the only difference between the universes, right? And I was always saying archipelago and everyone was saying I was wrong, to now another universe, a third universe, where now it's archipelago again, and I have to relearn everything. I feel like I'm shifting through universes whose differences are defined by the pronunciation of archipelago or archipelago.
Archipelago.
All right, well, who cares? Anyway, who cares? Who cares about that? All right, so what would be a famous archipelago? What is the most famous archipelago in the world? Would be probably the Philippines, right? Or the Malay archipelago, or the Japanese archipelago. But the Philippines are also an archipelago, right? All right, let's just do the Malay archipelago. Let's search and if you can't see this because you're listening, I apologize, but I'm trying to do my best to describe everything as best I can. So the Malay archipelago. archipelago. We searched that. It zooms us out. It zooms us in. We're in Asia. There we go. And Indonesia. We're heading down to Indonesia. Oh, wow. It's quite zoomed out because the Malay archipelago is enormous. So you can see these areas of land sticking out of the water, and it's a bunch of islands. The Malay archipelago, which seems to include Malaysia, and also, what else do we have here? New Guinea. Is New Guinea included in the Malay archipelago or not? I don't know exactly. The Philippines. So I think the Philippines may be part of the Malay archipelago. Are the Philippines part of the Malay archipelago? Malay archipelago, largest group of islands in the world, consisting of more than 17,000 islands of Indonesia and approximately 7,000 islands of the Philippines. The regional name East Indies is sometimes used as a synonym for the archipelago. There you go. There you go. All right. So a bunch of islands, essentially. Archipelago. We've got that one. All right. Great. Let's keep on going. All right. Hopefully I don't shift into any new universes in the middle of this, because that would be a disaster. Guys, if you have any questions or comments as we go along, I'll be looking at the live chat here, so feel free to add any color, knowledge, ideas for which ones to search. I'm open to it. Just let me know. Your pronunciation is closer to the Russian pronunciation. Okay. Well, so we've looked at also canals. So we've got continent, archipelago, canal, and strait are the ones we've talked about so far. So we're going to keep going. This is an exploration, and again, comments here are welcome. Luke, is there any rule to know if a CH, Chamalo says, in a word is pronounced like a K or a ch sound, or actually CH has multiple pronunciations? You've got CH as K, as in archipelago. You've got CH as in church, right? Both of those are the ch sound. And then you've got things like champagne and chandelier. I believe I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that almost every single soft SH sound, CH pronunciation originates from French originally. So in the year 1066, you had essentially a conquest of a French-speaking Viking guy named William the Conqueror, who came over to England from France, and in the battle called the Battle of Hastings, essentially became the ruler of of Britain at the time. And so then you have this massive influx of French into the English language. The English language has something like 30,000 French origin words as a result. And it was part of a class system where you have at the top French-speaking words spoken by the well-to-do, the people, the wealthy, the rulers, speaking a kind of old French hybrid dialect of old English and French, right? And then you have the lower class people, right, poor people speaking another one of what's called vulgarized version. And so these two sort of happening in parallel is the reason we have words like attorney and lawyer, or we have beef and cow. We have different words to describe things because of this influx of French, right? So I'm pretty sure that the reason that we have all of the SH, CH sounds is the influx of French. As to the pronunciation of CH as a K sound or of a CH sound, it's possible that there is some rule out there or some origin thing, like with French. It's not a rule, it's about the origin of the sounds. It's possible that connection exists of why it would be a K sound instead of a Ch sound, but I'm not aware of it if there is. Okay, so something maybe I'll have to look up in the future. I am not aware of any specific rule that can tell you whether to pronounce CH as K or Ch. Not sure. All right, let's continue our adventures through the planet Earth here. Now we go on to canyon, spelled C-A-N-Y-O-N. Let's just look up the definition, and we're going to, of course, look at the Grand Canyon. It's kind of hard to appreciate from above, but when you're there in person and you're looking at it from the side, it is absolutely insane. And I'll talk about the last time I went there. So canyon definition. Canyon is defined as a deep gorge, typically one with a river flowing through it. And you can see, if you can see here, a couple pictures. We have a kind of stone wall, essentially, with the river at the bottom. Now, you don't have to have a river there, but often, if there isn't one, it's because there used to be, and now it's gone dry. But the river that used to be there is what shaped the canyon. So you have a specific type of stone that can wear down relatively easily, particularly limestone. And for example, with the Grand Canyon, you have a river called the Colorado River that over a period of many millions of years wore down, I believe it's mostly limestone, wore down this limestone. So when you go there, you see this massive, well, it's a canyon, this massive open gorge with the river still flowing at the bottom, and you can see all of the layers. You can see basically chronicle of everything that happened in the past in layers. It's like a crazy birthday cake made out of stone, and it's amazing to witness. So let's search the Grand Canyon. I mean, people travel from around the world to see the Grand Canyon because it's pretty amazing. All right, let's take me there, Google. Let's go. Take me to the Grand Canyon. So let's see how high we can see it here. Zooming into the planet. So you see this, and if you can't see it, I apologize. What looks like a river shape, a sort of winding thing, and then you see this coloration around it, which makes it look like a brain cell or something. This fractal shape coming off of this main snaking shape. And this is the wearing patterns of the stone. So what you're seeing in this lighter stone color is the carving out of the stone that the river has done over millions of years. And it's hard to appreciate how big this is, but for context, if let's say you visit this side of the Grand Canyon and you want to go to the other side, so you're in the south and you want to go to the north, you have to drive for, I don't know, 6 hours or something just to get around the Grand Canyon. It's really, really big. And it's not like you just go to one little place and you see the Grand Canyon. Everywhere you go in this area, if you're driving around, you see it, this massive gorge, and it's very impressive. So let's see, the Grand Canyon. I went last year with Mushroom and my father. We went on a road trip in the Southwest, and it was really cool. And it was the first time I'd actually seen it. I had been to the Grand Canyon but not seen it, because when I was there before, it was foggy, and so we couldn't see anything. So I was standing there, I couldn't see a single thing. It was white out fog, which was very frustrating. So that this time we went, and you could see it, and you can imagine if you were down there, your sound does not get out. You're so far away. People die down there all the time. You get lost down there and you can't find your way back. If you're yelling, help, help, nobody will hear you. It's that big. And it's kind of scary, honestly. Okay, so Now we're looking at a picture from the side. Pictures are really hard to sort of express how giant this is, but it just goes on forever. And you can see the layers of weathering that happened. Pretty cool, pretty impressive. Okay, so that's a canyon. We've talked about continents, archipelagos, canals, straits, and canyons. And I should just quickly mention the canal is not technically a natural feature. It is an artificial feature because people dig that out. Okay. Let us talk about now a reef. The most famous reef is, I believe, the Great Barrier Reef off the coast of Australia. Well, let's just define what a reef is. A reef is a brand of some surfing equipment. Okay, our reef definition. All right, a reef. A ridge of jagged rock, coral, or sand just above or below the surface of the sea. And in a reef, you see a lot of interesting marine life. You see anemones, and you see a bunch of fish that live among the corals, right? A coral reef, not all reefs have corals, but a lot of, I think probably most of them have corals. They're living creatures. They're like underground plants, kind of. And they create ecosystems where a bunch of animals that can specifically live in reefs live. And so when a coral reef gets destroyed due to maybe changing water temperatures or something, a lot of them die. The animals who live there die. So the most famous one is called the Great Barrier Reef, and it's off the coast of Australia. And we can look at a picture here. We'll look at it on Google Earth in a moment. But it's this sort of thing you always see in nature documentaries: colorful underwater things called corals and clownfish, Nemos, sponges, starfish. Yeah, pretty cool. But then when they die, let's see, dead reef. Let's see. Dead reef. Yeah, when they die, it looks so sad. It just looks very depressing. Gray and white instead of colorful and interesting. I thought that was a shopping cart for a second. Okay, so let's search now the Great Barrier Reef. All right, we're zooming out. We're zooming out. Now we're zooming in. We're zooming in. It's taking us to the coast of Australia. And the Great Barrier Reef is, I believe it's that dark coloration there that you see. Let's zoom in a little bit. Can we get a view of the Great Barrier Reef? What? Hey, I think it's just this blue area. Okay, here we go. So we're getting a view of some among the dark blue of the ocean. We see some lighter blue coloration, and it almost looks like it's areas raised above the water, but actually I believe most of it is below the water, and it's a sort of the light blue color, so it's close to the surface of the water, and those conditions are what allow the corals to grow. I don't think that most of those can grow in deeper water. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but you can see the patterns or the little areas where the corals are growing, and each of these seems to be I think they're all named. So this one is called the Adelaide Reef. We've got the Potter Reef. We've got the Ellison Reef. We've got the Eddy Reef. We've got the Grat Beaver Reef. Not Great Grat. Taylor Reef. And we've got the Yamakuta Reef. Very cool. So this extends all along the northeastern coast of Australia from, essentially, it looks like from the tip, the northern tip of Australia, Jardine River National Park, all the way down to, what city is this? What city is this? I don't know my Australian geography very well. Brisbane, all the way down to basically Brisbane. Wow, pretty cool, pretty interesting. All right, I have never gone scuba diving in a reef, but that is something that I would really like to do. Someday I'd really like to learn how to scuba dive. Okay, so we've talked about reef, strait, canal, archipelago, continent. Let's talk about a peninsula. Spelling of peninsula, Peninsula, peninsula. And we'll look up a definition, but essentially it's land surrounded by water on three sides. Basically, a peninsula is, definition, a piece of land almost surrounded by water or projecting out into a body of water. And we need to look no further than the United States to see a perfect example of a peninsula. So actually, the country of Italy is a peninsula, and also the state of Florida is a peninsula. So we zoom over to the United States, and there we can see the state of Florida, which sticks out into the water with the ocean on either side. Actually, on the western side, it's called the Gulf of Mexico, which connects Mexico, or it stands between Mexico and Florida. And then on the other side, we have the Atlantic Ocean, and of course a lot of islands down there like the Bahamas, and then below Cuba. And that is a thing that sticks out with water on all sides is a peninsula. And another famous one is Italy. The country of Italy sticks out in the same way. So that is a peninsula too. But you can have, it doesn't have to be that big. Obviously, Italy and Florida, which I think are of similar size, if I'm not mistaken, are pretty close in size. Those are two large peninsulas, but you can have a much smaller one as well, for sure. Okay. So, that's a quick one. That's an easy one. I wonder if I search peninsula, just search the word peninsula. Where will it take me? It's taking me to New York State. Well, I don't want to go there. I'm already there. That's where I am. So, I'll just show you quickly. This is New York City from above. And actually, New York City, Manhattan specifically, is a peninsula as well. You can see on this side, on the western side, you have the Hudson River. And then on the eastern side, you have the East River. And then on the other side of the East River, it's Queens and Brooklyn. And then on the other side, across from the Hudson River, it's New Jersey. So then this Hudson River goes north all the way up. And this is how, this is named after an explorer named Henry Hudson. And essentially what he did, all of these places along were, some of them were discovered, some of them were named by Henry Hudson in hundreds of years ago. I'm not sure exactly which year. Essentially, he just went down the entire Hudson River on a jet ski, flying down the river, naming things like that. That's Cold Spring, West Point, Highland Falls, boom, boom, boom. He was just naming it, smoking a cigar. Pretty amazing. That's how it happened. So around this area is what's called the Hudson Valley, and it's called the Hudson Valley for a similar reason to the canyon thing, except it doesn't look like a canyon. Is the lower area is where the river flows, and then the area around it goes up higher because there are these mountain ranges around the river It starts with, see this area, the Mahunk Preserve. That's actually not too far from where I live. I actually went there to hike 2 weekends ago. And this area, known as the Hudson Valley, is really beautiful. I moved up to this area, the Hudson Valley area. It's actually a fairly large area. Earlier this year, and it's been a great experience. I used to live in Queens, around there, in an area near this park called Forest Park, and I used to walk there all the time. Anyway, so yes, Manhattan is also a peninsula, or at least I'm pretty sure it is. It has to be, right? Manhattan. Is Manhattan a peninsula? Manhattan is a peninsula. True or false? Manhattan is really an island. Oh, it's an island, a true island. It is bounded by the Hudson, Harlem, and East Rivers. To leave Manhattan, you must cross over, under, or on water by bridge. Oh, right. Yes, because... Oh, right. Because there is a bridge. I forgot about that. So here's Manhattan. And then this river, which is called the Harlem River, breaks away from the Hudson River, and it is what defines the boundary between Manhattan and the Bronx. And so if there was not this little Harlem River here that separates the Bronx and Manhattan, which you do have to cross a bridge to get across, then it would be a peninsula. But actually, Manhattan is actually an island as a result. Interesting. I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay. All right, so Manhattan is not a peninsula. It's an island, but it looks like a peninsula, but it's not, because it's an island, because it's a river. There's water on all sides, not three sides, and that's why it's not a peninsula. That's why it's an island instead of a peninsula. But if it didn't have a river there, it would be a peninsula instead of an island, which it isn't. Okay. By the way, guys, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate that. If you've got questions about grammar, pronunciation, idioms, culture, geography, whatever, let me know, and I will do my best to answer. We've got a few more features to look at. Geographical features to look at. We've talked about peninsulas, reefs, canyons, straits, canals, archipelagos, and continents. And we're going to be looking at... Oh, and we also talked about... What's the plural of isthmus? Isthmuses? 6 isthmuses. The isthmuses. We're going to be looking at deltas, atolls. We're going to be looking at plateaus. We're going to be looking at tributaries, gulfs, and I think that's it. Okay, so a couple more to look at here. Let's look at deltas next. Actually, you know what? Let's just get Gulf out of the way, because I already looked at a Gulf. We just didn't say, hey, look, a Gulf. The Gulf of Mexico. So a Gulf is essentially kind of carved out. If you look at it, you have this area which is not quite a sea, but it is a large area of water. And I don't know if there are any size limitations, but you can see it's almost completely surrounded by or bounded by land. But it's open here, right? And so it's this kind of shape here where it's kind of surrounded by water, but not quite enough to be called a sea or a lake. But it is kind of also the ocean, and it may have to be salt water. I'm not sure. We'll look up the official definition. You could say it's just a carve out of the sea in a way. Let's look at the official definition, though. A definition of Gulf. Gulf. A deep inlet of the sea, almost surrounded by land, with a narrow mouth. There you go. a deep inlet of the sea. So if it were, for example, a lake, it might not be, like the Great Lakes, for example, that might not be salt water. It's not part of the ocean. The Great Lakes are fresh water, not salt water. But a gulf is connected directly to the ocean. And so it is salt water because it's technically just part of the ocean, but it's almost like a special carve-out. It's almost separated from the ocean, except it does have that mouth that connects it to the ocean. So in a way, you could say it is kind of part of the ocean. There's that big area of land there that you can see where Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, nearly touches Cuba, which then nearly touches Florida, and there's those waterways in between them. And I believe the Yucatan Peninsula is where the meteor impact the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs landed. So the thing that killed the dinosaurs hit this area, the Yucatan Peninsula, and then killed all the dinosaurs. And then 65 million years later, you got people, humans, turkeys, and so on. So that's a gulf. Gulf of GULF. What's the difference in pronunciation between GOLF, the sport, and GULF? Golf. In my brain, it's different, but it almost sounds completely the same. But when I say gulf, gull, it's directly down to the sound. Whereas I say golf, there's actually more of an sound, more of an a sound when I'm pronouncing that one. So it is a slightly different pronunciation. What about, we've got 4 more I want to talk about. What about a delta? And by the way, guys, if you have questions about anything, please don't hesitate to pop those in the chat. A delta. A delta is defined. This is where the most famous one, I think, is the Nile Delta. Alejandro, hey, welcome. What is a delta? In geography, not Delta Airlines, deltas are wetlands that form as rivers empty their water and sediment into another body of water, such as an ocean, lake, or another river. Although very uncommon, deltas can also empty into land. Huh? What? Deltas can empty into land? Which delta empties into land? Delta entering into land. Inverted deltas occur when only one river reaches a sea or bay. But upstream, several distributary rivers exists. Inland deltas are far less common and occur when a river empties onto dry land. Okay, well, where's the inland delta? Inland delta. Give me an example. I want to find it. A river delta is a landform shaped like a triangle created by... I want to know an example. Inland delta, Africa. Okay. Okavango Delta. Okavango Delta or Okavango grassland. Swampy inland delta. Aha! Okay, finally we have it. I'm going to just copy that and we'll paste it into Google Earth. First, we'll look at the Nile Delta, though. So the Nile is the Nile the second or first largest river in the world? Is the Nile... let's just do largest river in the world list. Okay, Nile is the largest. Okay, Nile, 4,132 miles. Amazon River, number 2, 3,977 miles. Yangtze River, 3,915 miles. Yellow River, also in China. So number 3 and 4 are in China. And then the Congo River and the Parana River. Okay, cool. Mekong River. Yep. Okay, so the Nile River is number 1. Constantine says, Luke, some people think the Scotia Sea, it's between South America and Antarctica, Drake Strait, is the mark of the comet impact thousands of years ago. If you zoom in and out, what do you think? Okay. Oh, I got a lot to think about here. All right, so let's just quickly look at deltas, and then I want to check that out because that's an interesting point. Okay, so let's we're exploring here. So, okay, we've got the Nile Delta. Obviously, the famous thing about the Nile Delta is it's what allowed Egyptian civilization. I'm talking about the ancient Egyptians. It's what allowed the civilization to thrive because whereas a lot of people around the world depend on weather patterns and there can be good seasons and bad seasons, the stability of the seasonality of the Nile Delta area means that there's a flooding season and they know exactly when that's going to happen. And because they know exactly when that's going to happen, the agriculture around the flooding of the Delta allowed them to build infrastructure that allowed them to channel water and grow a lot of food and build this gigantic, amazing modern civilization. Modern, much more modern than others at the time. And a lot of that was based on the fact that they knew when things were going to happen, and because they could do that, they could you could count on it. You can make plans. You can make canals and you can do irrigation, right? Okay, so near where we were looking before, I guess it's part of what we were looking at before, the Suez Canal. You've got this area which is just completely green, and there's a lot of agriculture happening here. And one interesting thing here is that you can see all of these waterways, which are essentially channeling water from the Nile River as it exits into the Mediterranean Sea. The Nile River going north, essentially. You can see the Nile River Valley. This is where the flooding would happen. And then into the Nile River Delta, you can see this sort of triangular shape, and that is the shape of a delta, which is interesting. And it's interesting that you can see all of the irrigation, artificial irrigation. When you look at it just from far away, you can see very clearly all of the little channels that they've made to carry water around to the various fields and such. Okay, so we have this inland delta, and I'm curious what that looks like. So it's called the Wow, okay. So the inland delta, known as the, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, Okavango Delta, is really interesting. So it doesn't empty into a body of water like the Mediterranean. It's not clear that it's emptying into anything. It looks like it just kind of ends in the land. But it still has that same sort of spidery finger-like pattern as the river kind of fades out and ends. That's really interesting. That's a very interesting shape. I was not aware that you could have inland deltas. So this is, we're looking at, this is near, it's in Botswana. Wow, you can see it from really far up. That is visible from, very much visible from space. You can see that very identifiable shape. Wow, okay. They have some dispute about large. Asok says it's the largest by length, not by the amount of water it accumulates. So what would be the largest river by the amount of water that accumulates? I guess that would probably be the Amazon, I would imagine, because the Amazon has a huge amount of water, right? I'm assuming it's the Amazon. Gotta be. Okay, so Constantine has mentioned, I mentioned that the site of the impact of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs was possibly the Yucatan, and Constantine said maybe not. So let's look that up. Let's see. How would I search that? The Scotia Sea Impact Site, or let's just say Scotia Ski Impact. Let's see what we get here. Spatial and temporal operations. Scotia Sea Impact Crater. Montagnais is a meteor crater located on the continental shelf south of Nova Scotia, Canada. It measures 45 kilometers in diameter, and its age is estimated to be 50.5 plus or minus 0.76 million years. The crater is under the sea and buried beneath marine sediments in Nova Scotia. Ah, okay. South America. Okay, Drake Strait. Okay, let's take a look. I have no idea if that's correct what Konstantin is saying, but if that's interesting, if that's where... if you don't know what an impact crater is, it's something like this. It's where an asteroid hit the Earth. Okay, so let's see here. Let's just search Scotia Sea. The Scotia Sea. That's not right. Is that right? Between South America and Antarctica. Drake Strait. No, that's not right. This is Nova Scotia. No, okay, that's not right. Let's search Drake Strait then. We know what a strait is now. We zoom out. We zoom down between South America and Antarctica. Okay, Drake Passage is what it's called. I think it's too wide to be called a strait because, as we learned earlier, a strait is a very thin and narrow area of water. Okay, so where should I be looking here? Is the mark of the comet impact thousands of years ago? If you zoom in and out, what do you think? It's between South America and Antarctica. Okay, let's see if I can see anything here. Okay, what are we looking for? Zooming in and out, we're looking for an impact crater. I don't know. Where should I be seeing it? I don't know about that. I'm not seeing anything that looks like an impact crater in the features. Maybe I'm just not seeing it, but that's interesting. I mean, I'm obviously not an expert in this stuff. I'm just an English teacher, but it's still very interesting. Can we see it in the Yucatan Peninsula? Let's see. Yucatan impact crater site. I spelled it wrong. How do we see it? Can we see the Yucatan impact crater site? Okay. So it looks like it's on the northern side of the Yucatan Peninsula. Can we see that? So I guess it's around there, but you can't see it apparently. Yeah, I don't see anything special going on there. I don't know what I'm looking for. All right. I'm just an idiot looking at a map. All right, we got a couple more things I want to get through. So let's do that. Thank you for sharing that. Diraj, yes, I am an English teacher. That's right. You might not think that because we're looking at maps and stuff, but that's just what we're doing today. I am an English teacher. Correct. So if you have questions about grammar, idioms, culture, that sort of thing, feel free to let me know. Zoom out, he says. Zoom out. Okay, I'm zoomed out. What am I looking for, though? I don't know what I'm supposed to be identifying. I don't know enough to know what I should be trying to see. I don't know. Huh. All right. Moving on. I should have an expert on to talk about this stuff that I don't know enough about. Okay. Next we have an atoll. So an atoll, or an am I pronouncing that correct? Is it atoll? I've always said atoll, but now I'm worried that I've shifted into a parallel universe where things that I think are pronounced a certain way aren't actually pronounced that way.
Atoll.
Oh yeah, atoll. Okay, great. I'm right. I'm still in my original universe. So an atoll, what's the difference is when an island completely subsides beneath the water, leaving a ring of growing coral with an open lagoon in its center. That's an atoll, as opposed to an island, which is just land surrounded by water, like Manhattan, which is an island and not a peninsula. So what would be a famous atoll? Famous atoll. Let's see if we can find one. Famous atoll. Atoll. Bikini? Okay. So let's go with the Bikini Atoll. Bikini Atoll. All right, we zoom out and we go to the middle of the ocean, to the Bikini Islands, which is where they did some nuclear testing during or after. I think they did the bikini tests after World War II, bikini nuclear tests. It's pretty crazy to see that a lot of the people who were there ended up getting cancer and stuff because they were way too close to the blast radius of the nuclear explosions. It's pretty crazy. They have videos of it. So yes, an atoll. We have a reef / some islands in a ring, and this is where it's not a full island because the middle is not filled in. It looks very interesting. I think it'd be very fun to live there. I think this is the island that's called Bikini, and maybe that's where they did the nuclear bombs. Was it on this one? We'll look that up in a minute. Okay. All right. So we have two more to talk about. We've got an atoll. We've talked about continent, archipelago, canal, strait, isthmus, canyon, peninsula, reef, gulf, delta, atoll. And now we're going to look at a plateau. So a plateau, very interesting spelling, Plateau, is a flat, elevated landform that rises sharply above the surrounding area on at least one side. Plateaus occur on every continent and take up a third of Earth's land. So we're not talking about a little thing. We're talking about a giant area of raised land. They are one of the four major landforms along with mountains, plains, and hills. So I think probably one of the most famous examples would be the Tibetan Plateau. So when you're on the Tibetan Plateau, you are essentially on a higher elevation area than a lot of the land around it. So let's see if we can. I don't know if this is, by the way, something that's easy to see from above, right? But let's just see. Plateau, the Tibetan Plateau. We zoom out from the Bikini Islands from the Pacific and we zoom into Asia to. This is just not specifically where it is, but that's the region. Looks quite dry. This high elevation area, which is higher than the surrounding areas. You have India and Bangladesh over here. Myanmar. This is kind of awkward. I feel like I'm upside down. Can I flip this? Or I feel like I'm upside down. I feel upside down. I don't want to be like this. How do I rotate? Give me a rotate. I'm not sure how to rotate. Okay, well, anyway, this is north, this is south, and for some reason we're flipped around here. Can I figure out how to, okay, this is getting better here. I feel much better now. Okay, now I feel like it's insane because there's relatively no actual up and down, but somehow I feel confused when the north is up, or east is up, or west is up. So you got Kathmandu, Nepal, and then these are the Himalayan mountains. For example, where Mount Everest is. Where is Everest specifically? Not there. One of these is Everest. And then so this is where I believe two continental plates are slamming together, creating this ridge here. So underneath, you have large plates called tectonic plates, and the continents sit on top of these tectonic plates, and they shift around. Some of them are moving apart from each other, and some of them are moving together. For example, the Pacific Ocean is technically getting larger because there are two plates separating. And when they separate, they essentially make new material is added between them as the plates separate, because you have magma that comes up between the plates and it quickly cools because it goes into the ocean. And as the two continental tectonic plates move apart, essentially the Pacific Ocean is getting bigger and bigger. Obviously, they're moving extremely slowly. So what that means then, you also have some plates which are sliding side by side, and you have some plates which are smashing into each other. When they smash into each other, one of the plates is being subducted. Subduction is when one plate goes underneath. Usually there's a denser one and a one that's less, and one that's less dense, and so the one that's less dense is on top, sits on top, and the denser one subducts beneath. And there you usually have a lot of tectonic activity. So you get a lot of, for example, volcanoes and earthquakes and stuff when they're sliding side by side, and that's why, for example, Japan has a lot of earthquakes, and why California has a lot of earthquakes, because you have tectonic plates moving around. So here you have one tectonic plate smashing into another, essentially pushing up, because when one is going under, it's kind of crunching this one up like that, and as it's going crunching it up, it's forcing all of the material of the plate upward and forming a mountain chain. So as you form this mountain chain, you get the largest mountains in the world, essentially. So Mount Everest is as a result of two plates essentially slamming together, forming the Himalayan mountains. And then on one side, you have India and Nepal and Bangladesh, Myanmar, and on the other side, you have China. And this area specifically, Xinjiang is here in the northern area, and the Tibetan Plateau in the slightly southern, and I think that's it. I don't know if this part goes into it. I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, this area is much higher. This plateau is much higher than this area, so this is lower. Hence, the dryness. I think there's also a rain shadow effect, so maybe weather patterns moving this way are blocked by the Himalayan mountains. And then as a result, you don't get much rain on this side of the mountains. I think that's how that works, if I remember from some class I took a long, long time ago. Where specifically is Mount Everest, though? I'm curious. Oh, there it is. There it is. So there's Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. Doesn't look tall. Looks tiny. Can we get a 3D view? Let's get a 3D view. There it is. Wow. Again, it doesn't look that big from this view, but is big. Pretty cool. A lot of people have been up this mountain, and a lot of people have died trying to climb it, failing. Oh, this is Mount Everest. This one, yeah. This one. Wow, cool. It looks easy. How hard can it be? Can't be that hard. Yeah, that's pretty scary. And I think they just have to leave the bodies up there. So if people die up there, I think they just get frozen, essentially. Popsicleized. There's Mount Everest camp, so maybe you stay there and then you try to go up this way. Base camp is here as well. This is in Chinese, and this is in... What is that? I don't know. I don't know what language that is. Nepali, perhaps? Cool. What else do we have? We got plateau. Okay, last one is a tributary. A tributary. Easy peasy. Climbing Mount Everest is easy peasy. How many people die on Mount Everest every year? On the low end, we estimate around 3 to 5 people die each year on the Mount Everest base camp trek. On the high end, this number could be as high as 12 to 15. These numbers are estimates, but out of roughly 30,000 people who do the trek yearly, this is a death rate of about 0.03. Okay, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. At least 310 people have died attempting to reach the summit of Mount Everest. What's wrong with my mouth today? Mount Everest, which at 8,848.86 meters, or 29,031.7 feet, is the Earth's highest mountain. I one time lived a summer at about 10,000 feet, and it does weird things to you. I had insane dreams every night when I lived at 10,000 feet. So I can't imagine, we obviously couldn't live at 29,000 feet, but you need oxygen, and you start to get elevation sickness, and you can't stay up there for long or you'll die very quickly. At 10,000 feet, you can live. It's no problem. There's plenty of oxygen, but things are definitely different up there. You're getting a little bit close to the snow line, which is where beyond which trees can't grow. You might have snow there all year round, even in the summer. You see snow capped. I think it's somewhere around 12,000 feet that the snow happens, or the permanent snow happens. Maybe around 11, I'm not sure. But it definitely affects it affected my mind a lot. I was dealing with a lot of just weird emotions, and the whole summer I was there. Weird emotions and very, very surreal, strange dreams when I was living at elevation. But the stars are amazing because I was living kind of in the countryside area, and every night you could see the Milky Way so clearly. The stars were unbelievable. It's a creepy place with dead bodies everywhere. Yeah, seems like that would be. Creepy. All right, the last one we're looking at here is a tributary. A tributary is a river. Amar has never seen snow in his life. Well, you got to get out and about, Amar. Go somewhere. A river or stream flowing into a larger river or lake. That's pretty simple. So the things that make a river big are other little rivers. You get ice melting, for example, and the ice melts and it forms a little path of water, a little trickle of water. Maybe it doesn't even form a doesn't carve anything out. It's just water moving, and then it finds its way with gravity, finds its way into the lower areas of land, which then maybe there's a little stream, what we could call a tiny little stream, where the water is just trickling very slowly, nothing big. But then you realize, oh wait, that's happening all over the place. And then those little streams following gravity again are those streams are meeting larger things, maybe small rivers or creeks, right? So you have this slightly stronger flow, and then you see a slightly bigger river. Each one is a tributary of the larger one. So the tributary is contributing water to the next largest thing. And then those finally are tributaries to these large rivers like the Amazon River, like the Colorado River, like the Nile River. And it's a really interesting process. And I never really could visualize that until I had a couple of specific experiences. I lived in Colorado for a while, and at one place in Colorado, there's something called the Continental Divide. And the Continental Divide is essentially a place where the rivers going from the Continental Divide west flow toward the Pacific Ocean, and the rivers going east flow toward the Atlantic Ocean. And there's a specific line called the Continental Divide where you can see the water going in both directions. So I was standing on the Continental Divide, and I could physically see two pools of water flowing like this way in opposite directions, and just processing that these two things are going forming these giant rivers which ultimately flow into the oceans on the east and the west or the south kind of blew my mind. But it was the first time I was able to process it. But it was just the little trickles of water going in the opposite directions that sort of allowed me to have a mental model of how that process works. And it's all based on gravity. They're just water finding the low points essentially, which is very cool. And then the other experience was when I was in Costa Rica. I've told this story before, but I was in Costa Rica. It had just rained. And the tour guide said, we could experience flash floods. If we do, we need to get out of the river immediately. It's very dangerous. So we were swimming in the river. It was done raining. It had stopped raining. But this process was happening. The rain had caused these little trickles that lead into bigger things because it's all happening simultaneously. When the little tributaries reach the larger tributaries, it doesn't happen slowly because they're all reaching the larger rivers or the larger tributaries simultaneously at the same time. So it turns into a sudden flood rather than something very gradual. So we're playing in the water, la, 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 and suddenly we looked over and we saw this essentially brown wall of water coming toward us. We all jumped out of the river. 20 seconds later, it went and swept through. And if you had been caught in the river, there would be probably a 10% chance that you would have drowned. Honestly, it was a pretty terrifying experience, and it blew my mind how quickly that water was coming and why it would happen so fast. Why wouldn't it be gradual? And I realized it's because all those little trickles they're moving along slowly, yes, but they all reach the larger rivers at the same time, and that's why. And that's really interesting how that works. Sometimes you have to have those experiences to really kind of to make it click, right? You know it intellectually, but when you actually see something or experience something, then you can kind of understand. Tributary is contributing. What a pun. Well, yeah, that's what I do. That's why I'm here, to make bad dad jokes. In my language, we have different words for river according to its size, or if it empties into the sea, or if it is a tributary. Are there different names for rivers, or is it only river? Well, there are definitely different sizes. The lines between them are not so clear. There's, for example, a creek, C-R-E-E-K. Sometimes rednecks will call it a crick, C-R-I-C-K. But a creek is a very small river. Essentially, there's a trickle of water moving along, but there is an actual indentation in the ground where it's moving, a little channel, right? And then after that, it would be called, I think, just rivers all the way up. Now, the word tributary is not replacing the word river, because a river could be a tributary. You could have a small river that leads into a large river, in which case you would say River Y is a tributary of River X, right? So it's still a river. The name of the river doesn't change. It's still River Y, but it is also at the same time a tributary of River X, if that makes sense. What I'm curious about is, let's see, what is the difference between a creek and a river? And I'm curious if there's an official distinction, because a creek is smaller than a river, but is it defined how clearly, or is it defined very clearly? Flowing water finds its way downhill initially as small creeks. A small creek flow downhill. As small creeks flow downhill, they merge to form larger streams. Oh, that's one I forgot. Streams and rivers. So a stream would be larger than a creek. But I'm not sure exactly what the distinction is. It's something I have a general sense for, but I don't know if there's any official sort of definition. Rivers eventually will end up flowing into oceans. If water flows into a place that is surrounded by higher land on all sides, a lake will form. Rivers, streams, and creeks. Do we have official sort of size differences? Rivers, streams, creeks, they are all names for water flowing on Earth's surface. As far as our water science site is concerned, they're pretty much interchangeable. I tend to think of creeks as the smallest of the three, with streams being in the middle and rivers being the largest. Most of the water you see flowing in rivers comes from precipitation runoff from the land surface alongside the river. Of course, not all runoff ends up in rivers. Some of it evaporates on the journey downslope, can be diverted and used by people for their uses, and can be lapped up by thirsty animals. Yeah, I'm picturing thirsty animals taking all of the water from the rivers. Right. Okay, so there you go. They're the same, and there's doesn't seem to be any very clear distinction between the sizes, but people do have, I think, that general sense that it goes creek, stream, and river. Flash floods kill a lot of people. Amar is right about that, for sure. A lot of people drown in flash floods. I almost got caught in a flash flood once, and it was terrifying. The big curve that goes along the southeast part of Mexico is where the asteroid hit 65 million years ago. Okay. Really? The big curve. Hold on. Let us journey to Mexico. The big curve that goes along the southeast. So are you telling me that this large indentation here is the site of the impact crater of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs? Is that correct? Alejandro, if you're trying to share links, you cannot share links here, and that's why I'm not able to see, because I have disabled all links because people share very naughty things with links, and so I've just disabled. But this is, so I didn't realize it was that big. So this is, I thought it was sort of a smaller area of the, so this is the Yucatan Peninsula, right? So we know what a peninsula is now, 1, 2, 3 sides. And I was under the impression that it was a small sort of area where the asteroid hit, the one that killed the dinosaurs. Let's look this up. Asteroid impact Yucatan. Asteroid impact Yucatan. Images? Okay, well, it's showing that it's here. I'm not saying you're wrong. Oh, pre-post impact. What's this? I don't know, but I'm confused by this. It's showing that it hit right here. What do I know? Okay, I'll just spell this out. Chixulub. Crater. Yeah. Okay, so the effects of it are there, but it actually hit on the Yucatan Peninsula itself. So it hit actually here, but it affected all of this. So this whole area would have been massively affected by the impact, but it's not that the impact was exactly here. It's that it was affected by it. Got it. Regional effects. Fascinating. Fascinating. Interesting stuff. Well, this connects to something that I also wanted to bring up. We've got a bit of time left. Check exactly what I wrote. I'm not sure exactly which comment you're referring to. Exactly which thing that you wrote. Paste it again. So, there is a new podcast that I'm very eager to check out. I used to listen to Joe Rogan's podcast a lot, JRE podcast. I kind of stopped listening to it. I may watch a few clips here and there, but one conversation that was just posted has caught my interest, and I will be listening to the whole thing. There are two guys that Joe Rogan used to have on, Randall Carlson, and the other guy's name is Graham Hancock, and they have worked together studying this idea that human civilization is actually much older than most people think, than what the sort of standard story says, that human civilization started around 6,000 years ago, and with agriculture. There's this theory that actually there was an advanced civilization way before that got wiped out by a major catastrophe, and a few of those people from that ancient advanced civilization survived and then shared their knowledge with the people, the more primitive peoples, who then built civilizations like ancient Egypt and the Aztec Empire, right? That the knowledge that they got wasn't built up by themselves, but was passed to them by the survivors of this ancient civilization that was wiped out by a comet impact. So that a comet impact about 12,800 years ago caused sea levels to suddenly rise, massive flooding that it destroyed this, what's called an antediluvian civilization. It's really interesting. If you read Graham Hancock's book, even for entertainment purposes, he's a really good writer, and I found his books to be very, very interesting. So one, probably his most famous one is called Fingerprints of the Gods. And then he has a few others which are good, but that's an interesting one to start with. Anyway, there are a lot of sort of theories and ideas around this. One of the common examples that they give as evidence is this site in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe, which is an ancient temple site, essentially, where it's clear that there was a lot of organization, a lot of religious activities going on, animal carvings, therianthropes, where you have human-animal hybrids, not really, but in the carvings at Göbekli Tepe, where it's clear that there was a fairly high degree of civilization and a lot of sort of organization in that area way before civilization was supposed to have started. So that, along with some other evidence, has brought up this theory that maybe human civilization is a lot older, right? And I think it's really interesting. I'm not an expert. I don't know. It's very interesting. So there has to be then this thing that wipes out the first advanced civilization. And the theory is that it's this large impact crater that the Earth passed through a series of asteroids that then smashed into the continental shelf, I believe in Canada, suddenly melted a lot of the ice there and caused this gigantic flooding around the world, which is captured in a lot of myths. So actually, if you look at world cultures around the world, you will see that many of them have flood myths. That's pretty interesting. And some of these don't necessarily have connections. There's a lot of dispute and debate around it, but you could say, okay, well, all of those flood myths come from one story, and then they were disseminated out, and so then every culture has a flood myth, which was based on the first one, right? The origin flood myth. Maybe, but there are some that seem to be pretty disconnected, and so it's quite interesting that a lot of cultures around the world, which seem totally disconnected, have a flood story around the same time as 12,800 years ago. So anyway, all I'm saying is I think it's very interesting. I'm not an expert here, but I think it's really fascinating to think about, of course. So the famous one probably is the flood of Noah, which is the biblical story. But there's also the story of Utnapishtim, which is a Sumerian myth, a Sumerian story. Utnapishtim is the guy who survived the flood, and then by building a boat also, and then helps Gilgamesh. He tells him how to get a special plant that's going to allow him to live forever because he's afraid of death. That's the story of Gilgamesh, which I've talked about before. So anyway, here's the theory, and again, it's highly disputed. A lot of people don't really buy it. The sort of mainstream science completely rejects it, but it's, I think, at least worth thinking about, especially for people who don't know, right? It's fun to think about. So, controversial theory claims comet impact sparked human civilization. A cluster of comet fragments believed to have hit Earth A cluster of comet fragments believed to have hit Earth nearly 13,000 years ago may have shaped the origins of human civilization, a controversial theory suggests. According to the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, one or two comet fragments hit Earth, causing a catastrophic shift in the climate and the mass extinction of the Ice Age megafauna between 13,000 to 9,000 years ago. Megafauna would have been, for example, mammoths. You have these large, essentially furry elephants roaming around, and then suddenly they're just all gone, all dead, very suddenly. And the traditional story is, well, they were just hunted to death, hunted to extinction. But that seems to be a lot of elephants. I don't know. During that time, humans switched from hunter-gatherer lifestyles to ones centered on agriculture and the creation of permanent settlements, maybe in response to the changing environment. Since it was proposed in 2001 by nuclear physicist Richard B. Firestone and others, the theory about the catastrophic comet strike has been the subject of heated debate and much academic research. Now, Dr. Martin Sweatman of the University of Edinburgh's School of Engineering has reviewed the evidence assessing the likelihood that an impact took place and how the event may have unfolded. The study, published in the journal Early Science Reviews, highlights excess levels of platinum, signs of materials melted at extremely high temperatures, and the detection of impact-related minerals like nanodiamonds at various sites around the world dating back 13,000 years. All of this evidence strongly supports the impact theory, the review says. In 2017, an archaeoastronomical study even suggested that the impact was observed by humans and the event immortalized in stone tables discovered at the 10,000-year-old site of Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey. This major cosmic catastrophe seems to have been memorialized on the giant stone pillars of Göbekli Tepe, possibly the world's first temple, which is linked with the origin of civilization in the Fertile Crescent of Southwest Asia. Did civilization therefore begin with a bang? Sweatman asks. In 2008, The discovery of 2 large circular depressions hidden beneath the ice of the Hawaiian Glacier in northwestern Greenland provides potential evidence for the missing craters of the Younger Dryas impact. But the true origin of the 2 anomalies remains unclear as their exact age. Despite the popularity of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis in media and online communities, it remains a controversial claim. A review of proposed evidence in the past has shown many problems like dates not fitting the proposed timeline, misidentification of geological data, or results that other researchers failed to produce. So, fairly interesting. I would say if you want to read about it, maybe pick up Fingerprints of the Gods, which is a book that talks about this sort of stuff. The Gods by Graham Hancock. Oops, I misspelled gods. It's a really good book, and I really enjoyed it. This is the book. This is the book here. Fingerprints of the Gods. And I am going to be checking out later today the new podcast that just went up on Joe Rogan. I haven't listened to Joe Rogan in a while, but when I saw that they were back on Joe Rogan, I thought I need to check that out. So, very, very interesting theory and idea. I like the idea that there were people living in advanced civilizations before we think. But who knows? You like how you pronounce it. It sounds cute. I'll visit that place someday. It's not far from where I live. Amar, please take pictures. I would love to see that. Gobekli Tepe means hill with tummy, roughly. Darn spelling. Interesting. Interesting. Am I saying it incorrectly, Amar? Is that the issue? Bad pronunciation? That's just how I've heard it said. I don't know. I don't know. I'll leave you guys with one thing that a friend shared with me. If you go to a website called theinfiniteconversation.com, okay? This website, shared with me by Pablo, who you may have seen on the...
It signifies that we are on the verge of a complete chaos.
These are... somebody created an AI model using Werner Herzog, who is a filmmaker with, I always pronounce his name, Zizek, however you say his name, and he's a philosopher, a modern-day philosopher. Essentially, they created AI models for both of these two, and then just set them talking to each other. So it's not real. This is being generated in the moment, right? And so they talk, but they talk indefinitely. It's called the infinite conversation. Anytime you go to this website, you'll hear something different because it's just being generated for you, and it will go on forever with no end. These two guys talking to each other. If you've never heard them actually talk, it's amazing how close it is. This sounds exactly like how both of these guys sound. They have very unique voices. I suspect that they built the models around these two guys because they have very unique voices, but it's really interesting to check out. Again, it's called infiniteconversation.com. Let's listen for a minute.
And we don't know it. The signs are everywhere. We have an industry of manipulation and political control like never before. You or I will be manipulated this way or that way, and people who have no idea of the truth will become
There's
giants,
a fly in my
and
coffee
others
now.
will disappear from the scene. Think about Obama. He is the incarnation of poetry. At the same time, he has a hideous machine behind him. And all these people who want to destroy him as an enemy, they are just as much puppets and controlled by forces completely beyond them. All these damned senators who are locked into this vicious circle of hatred towards Obama, they are puppets too. They live in another world. They don't understand anything of what is going on. I would like to quote Milan Kundera now, and please bear with me. In one of his novels, he has a character, Ludwig, who says, "Now all that is left is the task of laughing because we are too unhappy to cry. That's what I feel these days.
No, I thought.
No, I think he's German or maybe Austrian. That accent is more like German.
Totally agree with you. The problem is how to laugh at the right moment. At when is the right moment? I would say that in such a situation, we need to laugh as early as possible. My theory of humor would have been
German.
totally rejected by Freud. He would have considered it a supreme example of ego defense mechanism. In cases like this, I think that what arises from our laughter is the opposite. It's not a way to avoid reality. No, this. What do I mean by this? Look again at the three gurus that I mentioned before, Hitler, Stalin, and Kennedy. What they all share is an apparent idiocy. This is something I developed when analyzing Hitchcock and laughter. With Hitchcock, we usually have the prima facie Hitchcock hero. He looks like a rational guy, but in fact he's crazy. He has some secret turmoil. And then there is the second type, where you have again...
It's insane. Don't even... Who knows what they're talking about? They're just... I think it proves that, you know, you can sound smart without actually saying anything. But that's fascinating that they were able to capture their voices that well. Really interesting. The infinite conversation. Constantine, bring about means to cause something. Bring on, the same as cause something unpleasant. Talking philosophical smack, and it doesn't make any sense at all. Well, folks, thank you for being here today. I had fun. My plan is this. So if you have ideas, things you want me to talk about, things you want to share, you can email them to me, right? Somebody sent me this and the idea to talk about geographical features. These are ideas that people have sent, right? So if there are things you'd like me to talk about, specifically topics, things to explore, I want to do that more on Friday. So here's my current way of thinking. Wednesdays may be meant as more of a let's learn hardcore English sort of lessons and Blackboard stuff and phrases and all of that. We'll keep that on more on Wednesday. And then Friday, I'd like to make more like this, where it's a bit more exploratory, a bit more discussion-oriented. I would like if people want to join and actually, talk with me and we actually talk about stuff together, to do that on Discord. I think that would be very cool. I want to make it a little more collaborative. So if you have ideas for how to do that, if you want to join and look at stuff together and talk about and discuss things together, that's what I would really like to do on Fridays. So, but I'm totally open to ideas on that. And then Saturday, tomorrow, it is Mushroom and I. So we'll be doing another one tomorrow. We have some cool stuff, I think, to talk about. So hang out with us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Amar, Alejandro, Vitali, Chama, thank you guys for joining. Lana, great to have you here. Luba, all of you guys, I appreciate it. If you haven't already joined the Discord, make sure you do that. That's probably the best place to just sort of talk about stuff. And Amar, that sounds good. Let's do it. Let's connect on Discord. Discord, you can email me, but I think Discord's probably the most efficient way for everybody to stay in touch, and I'm kind of always there. So, and you can message me privately or message me in the Discord groups if you want to do that. Thanks, Luba. I appreciate it. Guys, if you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And also, Wednesday's episode got blocked worldwide because of Dianxi Xiaoge, but I have snipped out that part, so Wednesday is back up. So we're good to go on Wednesdays. And check out the writing course. That's 9.5 hours on how to write English well. I have been working on that course for the last 2 years. I've been working on that course, and it is finally out. 9.5 hours on writing clearly, effectively, structuring writing, paragraphs, grammar, syntax, exercises, all that stuff. It is currently the lowest price that it will ever be, right? So check it out. That is on Udemy, and there are Black Friday sales coming up this month, this month. So that's gonna be big. All right. Yep. Sign up for Discord. It's not really. I don't consider Discord social media. It's more like, think of it more like a WhatsApp on steroids, I think, is what Discord is. Not really social media. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining. Have a happy weekend. I'm going to go eat some Indian food. I'm very excited for that. I'm starving, and I can't wait to have some Indian food. See you all. I hope you have a good weekend, and hope to see you tomorrow and or on Wednesday. Bye-bye.